I had a story for you that was all full of wacky anecdotes. But it's the last night of Pride, and recent events have kind of changed my mind about what to talk about tonight. Jamie J once told me that I don't tell stories like other people, and I think it was a compliment. And I think what she meant was that I often tell stories about other people when this is first-person arts. But I've been fortunate in my life working in documentary film that I've met so many extraordinary people whose stories deserve to be told and will never be able to stand up here and tell you. And I'm also one of those people who believe that we are never really dead and gone until the last story is told about us. So if you will indulge me for a little bit tonight, I'd like to remember a few people. Back in the 90s, I was asked to work on a documentary about the AIDS crisis. The United States government wanted to know why it was so difficult to get healthy gay men to participate in HIV vaccine studies. And what we found out was the prevailing opinion in the gay community was that even if the United States government had not created the HIV virus to attack the gay community, as many people still believe, the United States government was, at very least, guilty of a conspiracy of neglect that allowed the gay community to be decimated. So the producers of the documentary decided to pivot, and in this case, they wanted us to interview men dying of AIDS to see if they could appeal or shame healthy gay men into participating. So we traveled around the country interviewing men in the late stages of HIV. I met many incredible people, and it was devastating. We met Christopher. Christopher was a former officer in the United States military who had been dishonorably discharged for being gay, despite the numerous commendations he had for valor. He was a former Olympic hopeful, and after he was discharged, he climbed Mount Everest to the highest base camp. And before he could summit, a storm came in, chasing everyone in a panic down the mountain. Christopher was credited with saving 3 lives at risk of his own by literally dragging them down the mountain. He was a hero with or without a uniform. And to look at a picture of this guy just a year before I met him, it was like looking at Captain America, man. It was, tall, handsome, chiseled, body sculpted out of marble. And the man I met was 98 pounds, legally blind, and couldn't move without a walker. We met Rod. When his father found out he was gay, he threw him down the stairs and broke his leg in 2 places, and then threw him out of the house. Rod's father was a Baptist minister, and Rod was 12 years old. The leg never healed properly, and he always walked with a limp and in pain, but he could be seen limping up and down the hills of San Francisco, tirelessly working for gay rights and AIDS awareness. In New York, we met Tony. Tony just wanted to be a Broadway star. He'd been the star of his high school musicals, and he had this gorgeous voice. He moved to New York and made a living doing radio jingles and TV jingles, and he had a little nightclub act that played in various hotels. He got his first Broadway role 2 days after being diagnosed with HIV. And the first thing the virus did was give him thrush, which was an infection of the mouth and throat, and destroyed his gorgeous voice. And then there was Miss Sadie Hawkins. Miss Sadie Hawkins was a drag queen. And Miss Sadie Hawkins was the queen of any room she was in. She was imperious. She had very courtly manners and she would very politely ask your name before telling you what an ugly shirt you were wearing, or how terrible your haircut was. It was like the Dowager Countess from Downton Abbey meets Don Rickles. She refused to acknowledge that the virus existed. And when I met her, she was wearing what looked like a Victorian mourning gown with a black veil. And we asked her to move the veil for the camera, and she refused. But what I could see through the veil was an 80-year-old woman who was frightened to death. And she was 38 years old. When we interviewed all these folks, it was like they had all decided independently that they weren't going to answer our questions. They weren't going to participate in what we wanted them to do, that they were going to use this video interview to make a statement about who they were. Their last statement of, this is who I am, I was on this planet, this is what I loved, this is what I thought and felt. And the saddest thing is that Washington canceled the documentary, and all of these interviews are gone forever. Washington couldn't understand why these people who had been attacked, arrested, beaten, reviled, wouldn't want to participate in helping the very people who had reviled them. It took 6 years and 23,000 American deaths before President Ronald Reagan said the word AIDS in public. And he had spent those 6 years defunding and destroying every single government agency that was fighting the disease. And I remember back then we said never again. But you know what? The United States has 5% of the world's population, and we had, despite all our wonderful medical care, 25% of the world's COVID deaths under President Donald Trump. So I'll let you connect those dots, and then maybe you can see their true colors. Thank you for your kind attention.